Okay, everybody, this is our third and last recording, little lecture for week 2 of Introduction to Sociology. We will be focusing on culture for this recording. Like before, go ahead and open up your lecture quizzes. We will be completing numbers 4 and 5 during this recording. Okay, so let's proceed. So, what is culture? Culture can be loosely defined as a set of values, beliefs, traditions, behavioral expectations, practices, and artifacts that comprise the way of life of a people. We look at culture in contrast to nature and in contrast to what other people have or do. The way that people live their lives is a historical product of cultural influences. Our traditions, our styles, our beliefs, our artwork, our music, all of that is according to the influences of our particular culture. There is nothing inevitable about these practices, and alternatives do exist. If you remember last time, I talked about social constructionism. So we discussed this perspective last week, and social constructionists focus on ideas and objects and how they are defined. The social construction of reality is a perspective that prescribes that something is only real, meaningful, or valuable when society deems it so, and it becomes that way through social interaction. In this picture, I think I showed you this slide last time. This is a picture of an all-American breakfast. But we, through the process of social construction, we ask, how did this group of food come to be called breakfast? Why isn't it something else? Why isn't it like a hot dog on a bun with a milkshake and some pineapple slices? I don't know. Or why not what other people have in different parts of the world for breakfast? A lot of people have soup for breakfast, or fish for breakfast, or noodles or rice. But in our culture, this is the way that we define breakfast. So while we're on this topic, it's important to say that although there's nothing intrinsic or natural about us having this particular breakfast, there's nothing intrinsic about this food that makes it breakfast, that doesn't mean that the social construction doesn't matter. Social constructions are important because they are collectively held beliefs, and they are difficult to change. They are very, very powerful. You can't just go and change them. Although they do change, they change over time. It's very important to understand social constructions because if they place constraints on groups of people due to the social constructions of people, then they are very powerful, and understanding that they are social constructions helps us to contest them. And we will be talking about that more when we talk about the social construction of race and gender. But we will start with the social construction of reality here with culture, because all of culture, every aspect of culture, is socially constructed. So there are two types of culture. There is material culture and non-material culture. Material culture are what we call artifacts. All of the material resources and created construction objects in our culture and in our environment. This is everything like books, fashion, monuments, our roads, I'm looking around right now. It's the chair that I'm sitting on and the computer that I'm using. It's the lights outside that are starting to turn on because it's starting to get dark. All of that is part of our culture, and it's all material culture. Just as important as our material culture is our non-material culture. These are all the non-physical creations that are part of our world, such as all of our knowledge, all of our beliefs, behaviors, and social norms. It's important. Oh, let me go on here. So our values, beliefs, and norms are part of our non-material culture. So what are they? Values are moral beliefs. Norms, I put this in quotes because this definition is from your textbook, but I don't like it. Norms are how values tell us to behave. I don't even know what that means. So I like this one better. Norms are culturally defined standards or rules of conduct. And it should say culturally defined standards or rules of conduct. So all of our norms and our values are learned. None of them are natural or biological. All of them are learned through a process called socialization. And socialization is the process by which a person internalizes the values, beliefs, and norms of a society and learns how to become a functioning member of that society. So culture is made up of both material culture and non-material culture. It's made up of all of these components together and form a distinct unit that's differentiated from other units by its particular combination of components. These components are different in various cultures because of historical factors that are particular to that culture, and also the geography of the place and its available natural resources. We transmit our culture through a process called cultural transmission, which we do through socialization. Culture remains somewhat unchanged through the application of it over multiple generations. So it works through the process of socialization, which we will talk about next time. And of course, through this process, and part of our culture is language, and all the other norms that are part of our culture. So let me go back. I'm just realizing I didn't answer a quiz question. So quiz question number 4, computers, romance novels, popcorn, and football puppies. Are they material culture or non-material culture? They are material culture, which is selection number 2. So let's see. So what's important to remember here is that culture differs according to context, historical or geographic context. The U.S. culture is in many ways very different from, say, Brazilian culture. But these differences may be localized as well. So the culture in California might be really different from the culture in New York. An example that I have for that is here on the screen, where I say here all norms and values are socially constructed, and you can see a picture of people standing in line at the grocery store. I like to give this example, and this is your last quiz question 5. I went to graduate school. I grew up in California, and so I go to the grocery store the California way. I really didn't think there were a lot of different ways to go to the grocery store till I went to graduate school in Long Island, New York, which is your second option on your 5th question for your quiz. And when I went to graduate school in New York, in Long Island, New York, I went to the grocery store and I had a really difficult time there. I would go and I would gather my groceries and I would pick them up And then I would go to the checkout counter. Now, the first thing is the cart. Okay, you see this thing in the picture where the groceries are in. Here in California, we call that a cart, a shopping cart. In Long Island, New York, they call that a wagon. So that was my first impediment. I was calling it the wrong thing. But the next thing that happened is I would get in line and I would just be kind of casual like these people are, just looking around, talking, looking down at my groceries. I was new, so I was feeling pretty shy. And I would just kind of look down. And people would just cut in front of me in line. It was crazy. Every time I went to the grocery store, for probably my first 2 months of living in Long Island, New York, my people just cut in front of me in line. And it was really hard for me to check out because and it wasn't just like teenagers or something. It was like even elderly old ladies would cut in front of me in line. It was this super crazy thing that would happen. And finally, one of the checkout people took pity on me and said, you're not holding yourself in a way where you are holding your place in line, and people are just taking advantage of you and thinking that you're too nice, and they're cutting in front of you. And she showed me this posture that I had to stand in a certain way and give sort of this look like you better not even try to get in front of me. And I realized that this was a big difference in norms. Okay, this was a big normative difference. That in the grocery store here, when you go in the checkout line, it is expected that if you are there, then the person that comes next goes behind you. But in New York, the norm was different. And the person, behind you may go in front of you unless you hold your place in line. So that sounds really weird to us Californians, right? And that brings us to our last concept for this recording, which ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. So ethnocentrism is the belief that one's culture is superior to other cultures and the tendency to view other cultures from the standpoint of one's own. So this is what we do when we think Long Island, New York has weird checkout lines. And we're thinking, well, they do it wrong. Our way is better. We are engaging in ethnocentrism. But you see, ethnocentrism we think of as not a positive way of being. We want to believe that it's better to engage in cultural relativism, which is the idea that we should recognize differences across cultures without passing judgment on or assigning values to those differences. An example of this is in the colonization of Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands. Before any European explorers ever discovered the Hawaiian Islands, there were Native Hawaiian people who lived there, and it was a very hot place, and the climate didn't require wearing a lot of clothing, a lot of heavy clothing, and so I don't know if you've ever been to Hawaii, but it's pretty warm there, pretty hot. You don't want to wear wool or jackets or anything like that. When the European explorers landed there, they were shocked to see how undressed the people were in Hawaii compared to how they were dressed. And the European explorers at this time, they were pretty puritanical. Some of the first people that landed in Hawaii, oh gosh, I'm running out of time, were very religious people, and the women wore full wool dresses. And they passed judgment on the Hawaiian people and then went on to colonize them and think less of them. This is an example of ethnocentrism. And the way that maybe we would have liked for them to do it would be to have taken into account the differences between their culture and the Hawaiian culture without passing judgment on them. Okay, my 15 minutes are up. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you guys have a good week. I will be joining you on the discussion board.